charges of government conspiracies and cover-ups if you have the government do it, right? So, all right, so the government can't do it. That's a bad idea. Let's have an international third party do it. Like ICANN. Yeah, ICANN can't even control domains properly, and we want to give them vulnerability information. Not a good idea. And even if you did that, who's going to fund it? Where's the money going to come from? Yeah, see, can you guys read these fonts? Because I can't read them, and I'm right here. Membership. So if you charge a fee for membership, then you end up with accusations of people selling vulnerability info. And that's not what you want from a clearinghouse of vulnerability information. So it comes down to who do you trust? The bigger the organization, the more likely the info will get out. Who's in, who's out, who decides. These are all reasons why an industry-wide map program isn't such a great idea. Yes, it works great for Microsoft, but if we try to expand that and include larger organizations, the issues and the manageability of the program becomes untenable. Oh, that was not on purpose. Sorry. That was not on purpose. They also have a problem of the rogue researcher. That was on purpose. You have people who just basically say, fuck you, I'm going to do what the hell I want. It's my bug. If I want to let the world know about it right now, I'm going to do that. So if you set up a major clearinghouse for vulnerability information, there's no way to force people to send you that vulnerability information and not spread it out to the world. This still happens even with Microsoft programs, right? Researchers will find a vulnerability in a Microsoft product. They don't necessarily report it to Microsoft. They do full disclosure and just release it out into the wild. Of course, that means Microsoft has to scramble to cover that bug and patch it up quickly. And you can't control that. There's no way to do that. All right. So basically, I recover all my points that I just made. You have governance issues, information politics, international politics, money, drama and infighting, rogue researchers. These are all reasons why a nationwide, a global map program is not going to work industry-wide. All right. Into topic one. We'll move on to topic two.
Are you fielding questions?
I am, but if you were paying attention at the beginning of the talk when I talked about questions.
We were too busy to
Yeah, we were trying.
Do you have a quick question? I'll answer now.
Well, so what about something like the ISACS model, where you've got threat and vulnerability information being distributed along a critical infrastructure vertical? And obviously, that's U.S.-centric.
It is.
That limits the blast radius within a vertical. Can Microsoft, Adobe, and others plug into the top level of the ISACs and distribute through that?
I find that the ISAC information isn't all that private. Like, it's already public, a lot of it. It's just not widely disseminated. It's not. And if it was more valuable information, if it was more private, it would leak better. It would be more prone to leakage.
Right.
And I think you'd end up with the same issues. There's no way to keep it private.
So the threat.
I love the information dissemination part, but if you're trying to do zero-day vulnerabilities, that's where it falls apart.
Is that because you think sharing threat information is not as critical or sensitive as sharing vulnerability information?
Sort of.
Okay.
We can talk later. Yes, I said cyber. I'll say it again.
Drink.
Cyber.
Drink.
No, I will not drink. All right, let's talk about smoke. Good answer. Let's talk a little bit about the word cyber. It originally starts in Greece, right, as part of kybernets, meaning governance. I'm not pronouncing that right. Cybernetis, meaning governance. It wasn't really used in popular culture at all until 1948, when this guy named Norbert Wiener. I don't know what it is. Major talks I do, I always come up with this guy named Wiener that I have to say his name 100 times, Wiener. The last talk I did was a media hype talk with some representative from New York who was submitting dick pics around. His name was Wiener. So anyway, I got another Wiener in my talk. So he coins the term cybernetics in 1948.
Here's the gift for that.
Yeah, we're not going to go there. Cybernetics, or control and communication of the animal and the machine. The word kind of doesn't go anywhere for a while. It gets bantered around here and there. It's used a little bit. 1966, they come up with a term called cybernocracy, which I want to mention because it's the ultimate surveillance state. The high level of public awareness of the surveillance state and the prospect of comprehensive technologically mediated social control. The word cybernocracy was actually used quite heavily in the early 90s in Germany as protesters tried to protest the census in Germany at the time. But cyber as a word didn't really go anywhere until a little while longer. Sorry, I'm jumping around. So we have cyberpunk comes out in the music scene in the late 70s. And it was specifically used to describe the song Cars by Gary Newman, which if you listen to it now is not cyberpunky at all. But at the time it was considered cutting edge. But it wasn't until the 80s when William Gibson comes out with Burning Chrome and Neuromancer where cyberspace really starts to take off and become popular. But then, so by the early 90s, you have cyber anything. And yeah, that includes cyber sex. And this is where everybody gets upset about the word cyber, because it's used to describe cyber sex in 1991. And of course, that means AOL chat rooms and IRC channels. And of course, now everybody giggles when everybody, or yells drink when everybody says cyber. But in 1993, you also have the term called cyber war comes out, right? But by 1998, it's all over. Cyber sex was pretty much out of the vocabulary. Nobody was talking about it anymore. Nobody was doing it. I don't know if anyone was doing it before, but they definitely weren't doing it by 1998. Cyber sex was out. Cyber war was in. And it's interesting.
That's what's wrong with the world.
That's what's fun.
We stopped having sex and we started having war. Damn it!
Make war, not sex. So it's interesting. Cyber as a word is interesting from a linguistics point of view. If you're a linguist and you study how words evolve, the cyber is an excellent, great case scenario. The problem is that it's modern and it's still evolving and changing. And for some reason, linguists like words that are like 1,000 years old. They don't like new words. Go figure. But it's really an interesting word and how it's changed and evolved. But now, right, cyber is used as a prefix and a standalone word. It is in the Merriam-Webster's dictionary of or relating to computers or computer networks. There are 25 entries of the word or prefix cyber in the Merriam-Webster's dictionary. Cyber sex is one of them. Cyber war is not yet. Cyber war is in the Oxford Dictionary. So depending on what dictionary you get, depends on where you get the word. But the fact that there are this many words in the dictionary that start with the word cyber, it's really evolved beyond the chat rooms of AOL of the 90s, right? So the word cyber is really part of the lingua franca, I can't pronounce that either, of government. Meaning they use this word all the time, right? That is what they say. They say cyber left and right, and they're serious about it, and nobody's giggling in the back of the classroom talking about cyber sex. It's used in the title of the bills, Cyber Intelligence Sharing and Protection Act. It's really an important word that is used to discuss technology in government and higher levels. So if you really want to affect any sort of change with the CFAA, COPA, SOPA, DMCA, any of those other bills, you're going to come across the word cyber, and you have to get used to it. All right? I'm not saying you have to use it. Like, I try not to use it that much. Same with the word hacker, but that's a whole other topic. But you definitely have to stop giggling and yelling the word drink when somebody else uses it. Now here, of course, it's fine. We're all friends. We know everybody, and we know what drink means when people yell it. But if you're in a government hearing or something, and a senator says cyber, and you start giggling and yelling drink, it's not going to go over so well, right?
Never know.
It's true. You never know.
I was going to say, next time Kennedy's in front of the Congress, that'll be his word of the day.
So cyber, I think, is here to stay. It's going to be used. We have to get used to it. As far as hacker goes, I haven't given up on it yet, but I don't really use either one of those words. But if somebody else does use them, it's probably best to not start doing it. So, all right, where am I on time? I'm a little ahead. I'm not doing too bad. Okay. All right, next topic. Government cyber hiring. Hey, I used the word cyber again. So this is a nice quote. So if they can't run 3 miles with a pack on their back, but they can shut down the SCADA system, we need to have a culture where they fit in. Major General William Lord, U.S. Air Force's Cyber Command. Basically what he's talking about here is that there are some people in the military specifically feel that they need to remove the physical requirements of, quote, cyber warriors in order to attract top people. When I say cyber warriors, I'm talking about MOS 25 Bravo, 35 November, 35 Quebec, information technology specialist, signals intelligence analyst, and cryptologic network warfare specialist. There's probably a couple other MOSs that fit in there as well.
Don't you have to give money to Ellen Fowler every time you say cyber warrior?
Oh, is he like a trademark term?
Royalty on that or something?
Yeah, good luck. Go ahead. Send me a bill. Watch me pay it. So, government thinks of hacker as a stereotypical, underweight guy, lives in his mom's basement, eats pizza, lives on Mountain Dew, non-patriotic guy, physically lazy. Obviously, this is not a true depiction of people who are in information security.
Correct. I live in the garage.
Well, some of us live in garages, that's correct. And I just moved out of my basement this summer, so there you go. But this is when Major General William, it's only 2 stars, so he's nobody. U.S. Air Force Cyber Command, when he says this, that's who he's talking about. That's who he's trying to attract, because he doesn't know really who it is he's trying to hire. He's not familiar enough. So, but why do people join the government? Why do people take government jobs? Why do people join the military? There are a few different reasons, and usually for most people it's a small combination of all of these, right? Money. Government jobs have some of the best benefits of any other job out there. And I put them up against any West Coast startup as far as benefits go. And education, when I say education, I don't necessarily mean GI Bill or money to go to school with, because that goes in the money category. Education, I mean on-the-job training. Where else are you going to learn to, become a helicopter mechanic and have them pay you to do it, right? Patriotism is always a small part of it. Job stability. Uncle Sam's not going out of business. That job's going to be there for a while, right? They're not going to downsize. They're not going to lose their funding. Well, unless we all start tax revolt, but that's not going to happen. And of course, you have some people who join the military because they like guns. I hate to get away from, I hate to say that, but it's true. There are some nutcases in the Army, and they like big guns, and I cannot lie. All right. So the government has a lot of things going for it about why people join the military, why they take government jobs. Here's another quote on cyber hiring. Government cyber hiring. FBI Director James Comey. I have to hire a great workforce to compete with those cyber criminals, and some of those kids want to smoke weed on the way to the interview. Besides just insulting everybody he's trying to hire, he actually later had to retract his statement. He said he was only talking in general terms, in kind of trying to make a joke. And I don't know, in any job anywhere where you can show up to the job interview stoned and actually get the job, except for maybe Burger King or something. Arby's. So you have a lot of people complaining about the fact that there aren't enough people for these jobs to work in government, right? That's not the problem. The problem is government now has to compete against the private sector. And there are plenty of people for these jobs. It's not like there's 3 of us and we're trying to get into 100 jobs. There are plenty of jobs out there and plenty of people for them. In fact, the government has the National Centers of Academic Excellence and Information Assurance and Cyber Defense, of which this university is a member. There are 48 of them across the country. They're run by the NSA and the DHS, and it was started in 1998. They're graduating thousands of people a year out of these programs with associate degrees straight up through doctorates. And the government gets basically first pick out of all the graduates out of here. Now, so there's plenty of entry-level people. Now, the higher-level people, there aren't as many people, but you're not going to attract them by relaxing physical fitness standards and allowing them to smoke dope. That's just not going to happen. So there's no shortage of people for jobs, and it upsets me when I hear government people talk about recruiting and they really don't know what they're talking about, because there are plenty of people out there looking for jobs. Maybe they just need to pay a little more or otherwise incentivize people. All right, next topic. This one I just added this morning. Default passcodes for Tranex and Triton ATMs were printed in manuals and posted online. This was discovered in 2005, give or take. The companies Triton and Tranex posted a default password or printed the default password in their manual, and then somebody basically scanned the manual and posted it online, one of their support companies, including the default password. So what does this mean is that you can go to any ATM that's operated by these companies, punch in the default passcode, have it change a dollar bill, a 20 to a 1 to a 20, and just take out $5 and get 100. The password itself, by the way, was 1234556. Right?
Some people's luggage password.
Some people's luggage password. Pretty simple, basic password. Now, they did have a line in their configuration manual where they recommended people change it, but they didn't force them to. So this, of course, by 2006, the company says, okay, we're going to release a patch, but they, of course, they don't force anybody to install it, and so nobody does. In 2007, in 2008, and in 2014, this flaw was actually used by criminals to steal money out of the ATMs. Basically, you just walk into the corner grocery, the gas station, you go up to the ATM that nobody else is paying for, you type in the passcode, you enter in a couple other commands, you change your $20 to $1, and you withdraw 5 bills, you get $100 for 5. Right? Pretty simple attack. So you would think that people would learn about this eventually and fix the problem. But no, as a matter of fact, this morning, there was another story. This morning was in, I think, Tennessee. They made $400,000 attacking 44 different ATMs. In this case, the guy worked for the company that installed the ATMs, and then he quit like 2 years ago, and they never changed the password. So he just went around to all their company's ATMs and took out all the money. So, yeah, another case of we're not learning. Where am I on time?
We think our money is so secure.
Yeah, money's secure. All right. Some of you know I used to run a website called Hacker News Network. Started in the 90s, late 90s as a website, and then I brought it back in 2000s as a video blog covering information security news. And I keep getting people to asking me to bring it back, saying, "Oh, I really love the show. You know, you really should bring it back. It was awesome. You know, I just spent 20 minutes a week watching it. I didn't spend 40 hours a week building it." So the answer, of course, short answer to that is no. I'm not going to bring it back. Reason being is that it took me 40 hours a week to build the show, and that was 2 people. Plus, I had a 40-hour, 50-hour, 60-hour a week job on top of that, and basically it destroyed my life. So it's not going to happen unless. And it didn't make any money. I do have to thank the 2 sponsors I had, which was TrustRate, Spider Labs, and Astaro, neither one of which exist anymore. Oh, wait, one of them does, sort of, but not really. I have stickers here of H&N later if anybody wants any. Not bringing that back. I also have other gifts. I think I tweeted out that I would bring gifts. I have some leftover H&N shot glasses for you later on. So yeah, it took a lot of work. I made no money at it. Destroyed my life. What?
Now can we yell drink?
Yeah, you can yell drink if you want. You can drink it. You can yell it anytime you want. I'll just think you're crazy. That's all. All right. So the other thing people sometimes ask me to bring back is Whack-Knack Archives. Whack-Knack Archives was an FTP site I used to run back in the late 90s. Basically had Mac hacking software, which was really hard to find at the time. Things like war dialers and viruses and cool little stuff like that. But yeah, the answer again is no. Not bringing that back. Why? Viruses are illegal. Don't want to go to jail. And OS 10 is Unix, so GitHub. Oh yeah, let's. Cool. All right, next topic. I need a drink. Drying. Cyber Squirrel 1. Anybody familiar with Cyber Squirrel 1? Other than Jack? Nobody. Good. So when was it? BrewCon 2012, ThoughtCon 2012, Brian Martin and Josh Corman did a talk called Cyber War, Not What We Were Expecting. One part of that talk, Brian Martin compares outages, electrical power outages, as caused by cyber war attacks to those of squirrels. Right? And if you know Brian Martin at all, attrition.org, he's a big squirrel guy. So he compared outages caused by cyber war to outages caused by squirrels. He found that every state had an outage caused by a squirrel, except for Hawaii, because there are no squirrels in Hawaii. It's a mistake on his slide. He wanted me to point that out. There are outages caused by other animals in Hawaii, but not squirrels. So I saw this talk. I saw him give this talk, and I was pretty taken by it. I thought it was pretty awesome. Like, somebody really should document all these outages that are happening by squirrels, because they're really impacting our cyber infrastructure, and we need to make sure that people are aware of just how much damage the insidious cyber squirrel is causing. So I created the Cyber Squirrel 1 Twitter account. And basically, I have a Google search that looks for squirrel and power outage, and then I tweet all the power outages that happen by squirrels. So a couple of nice, interesting stats we had. Had 7 attacks by squirrels in August, and 23 in October. And yes, there was a jellyfish attack where a nuclear power plant sucked in a whole school of jellyfish and had to shut down the intake. So I counted that as a cyber attack of jellyfish.
Squirrels are getting smarter.
Squirrels are getting smarter. Some of these stories are pretty interesting. I made Cyber Squirrel 1 stickers. So if anybody wants some stickers, I got some stickers for you today. These stickers are expensive. How many people have actually gone out and made stickers? They're not freaking cheap. So if you got $1 or something, I would appreciate that. Because I paid for those out of my hand. The H&N stickers, Star paid for those, so I'll give those away for free. All right, I want to talk about an organization called Securing Change. Securing Change is a nonprofit organization based in Boston, run by a guy named Oliver Day. He's a very bad self-promoter. He's a very good altruistic person and is very good at organizing his organization. So I'm going to help promote his little organization for him today. Basically what he does, he has a nonprofit that is helping other nonprofits securing their infrastructure. So his tenets are basically that security is expensive, and nonprofits don't have a lot of money. But nonprofits deserve just as much, if not more, security as everybody else, right? But they don't. Computer stuff is like the last thing they think about. They want to get blankets onto people's houses just burnt down, right? They don't really are worried too much about whether their website is secure or not. So his focus in his organization is on basically recovering their websites or their operations as quickly as possible. He wants fast recovery so that he can help the helpers, right? So he offers 3 services. One of them is website security. He does incremental backups of websites so that if a website is compromised or defaced, they can look at where the intrusion happened from and restore from backup and close the hole and get them back online as quickly as they can. This helps prevent drive-by downloads, water hole attacks, web shell, etc. Also does a JavaScript scan of the website, looking for iframes and shells and obfuscated JavaScript stuff, so that if the website is compromised, you can strip that stuff out quickly and get them back online. It also covers endpoint security, where they basically check their desktops and mobile devices against best practices to make sure that they're applying patches and doing things they should be doing that they don't really have time to be doing because they're busy giving blankets to people whose houses burnt down. They try to assist with incident response. So if there is a compromise of either a system in the organization or their website, they can try to figure out what happened and how to close the patch. So like I said, Securing Change, they're based in Boston. It's run by a guy named Oliver Day. He's got some really cool people helping him out. He just really sucks at self-promotion. So I'm helping him promote today. If he does have, I don't want to say offices, he's basically a volunteer-based organization. So if you want to help him volunteer, send him an email, tell him I sent you. He's trying to branch out. So if he knows that you're in Delaware and he has nonprofits in Delaware and he can point you to them and help make that link up, that would probably go really well. All right, how are we doing on time? We're going fast, as I suspected. All right. Oh, wow, really fast. All right, maybe we'll get some ranty going here. I want to talk about user blaming. We do this too much, right, as an industry. We all heard about the ID 10T error, right? Idiot error, guy behind the keyboard, nut that holds the wheel. We blame users for a lot of different things. We blame them when they choose a weak password. It's not the user's fault they chose a weak password. It's your fault for letting them choose a weak password. I don't want to get into the whole passwords are useless debate because that's a whole other story. But that's not blaming the user. blaming them for choosing a weak password, even if it is their pet's name with a number on the end of it, as the guy who ran Silk Road 2 did, it's still, you can't blame the user for that. We tell users don't click shit. That's their freaking job, is to click shit. You give them a computer with a mouse and a bunch of things to click, and you say don't click shit. What are they supposed to do? They're going to click stuff. It's our job as security professionals to be able to allow them to click stuff and do it safely. We tell them don't visit bad websites. What the fuck's a bad website? How do they know what a bad website is? Right? Don't do that. Don't visit it. You caused this problem because you visited a bad website. My favorite, which happened recently, don't take nude selfies. Especially you. Don't take nude selfies.
We all know that.
Anymore.
Look, if people want to take nude selfies, let them take nude selfies. You know? If that's kind of like telling people, oh, don't put your spreadsheet on your computer because it might get hacked. You know, don't leave your email out because somebody might look at it. Don't take nude selfies. That's not the user's fault. It's our job as security professionals, right? This is our job. It's what we get paid to do. We need to make systems secure enough that people can use them without fear of bad things happening. By blaming the victim, you're saying that you didn't do your job properly. Instead, blame the people who made the Flash or the PDFs or the Internet Explorer for being so exploitable and then sold it as being secure. All right? It's our job to prevent attacks. It's our job to detect attacks. It's our job to recover from those attacks. We need to prevent attacks if we can by any way we can, as long as systems remain usable. If we can't prevent the attack, then we damn sure better detect it quickly. And of course, we need a way to reconstitute our environments after a compromise. Of course, we're failing pretty badly, as an industry at the first two, and not so sure we're doing so well at the last one.
So in the interim,
Yes.
while the industry and everything else is still broken, we can't magically fix that overnight. There's still no interaction or other. How do you get the interaction to the user to find some median point to get them a little more secure, give them some more responsibility on it until you get to that endpoint?
I'll tell you what, it's not.
I lost you.
1 hour PowerPoint once a year.
Yes. Yeah, your industry training, I mean, sure, you can do training. You can train your users and have them sit in your class and tell them don't click things that look bad. But have you seen some of the more advanced fishes that are out there? They're pretty, like, they fool me. Like, the users are going to do stuff. They're going to click stuff that you don't want them to click. Okay, you need to accept that, and you need to be able to fix that when it happens. Because it's going to happen. People still get in car accidents no matter what we do. So we try to make the cars a little safer, right? So we need to try to make our networks a little safer. It's not perfect. People still get in accidents. People still click stuff. But we can't blame the user for when it happens, right? We can't say, oh, it's your fault. You broke the computer. You click stuff. You don't blame the user when their car gets stolen, even if they leave the keys in it. It's the other guy who goes to jail. So anyway, any other questions? Yes.
So can we blame them if they take nude selfies at work?
Well, that's a problem of your acceptable use policy.
That's an HR issue.
That's an HR issue. Thank you. Yes. Any other questions? I covered a lot of ground. Yes.
Your second bullet was prevent attacks. You mean prevent relevant attacks or just in general?
Prevent attacks. That's our job. That's what we're supposed to do. That's what we get paid to do, right? As security professionals, it's our jobs to detect and/or prevent. And if we can't do those, then to fix it afterwards, right? That's what we get paid for. We can't sit around and say, oh, it's your fault because you did something you weren't supposed to. Because you don't know any better. You're a user. I know better. We know better. That's our job. And I'm still 10 minutes short, so I hope you got some more questions. Yes.
Is this
Why you?
Is this a metric hour that you're measuring with?
Yes. I told you I was short. I talked fast. That's why I added all these topics. Because it was supposed to fill out a whole hour, but I still talk too fast. Any other questions?
It's okay. I might try to beat you for speed instead of talk.
Okay, good. It's not a race, but you can. I'll cede that to you if you want. All right. There's another question. I have gifts. I came bearing gifts. I have coffee. If anybody wants coffee. All right. I've got old H&N stickers. I've got Cyber Squirrel 1 stickers.
What do you mean you have coffee?
I have $2 off coffee.
Oh, just like you just clean out your freaking car and be like, oh, here's a cup
Yeah.
of coffee I found.
Do you not know how this works at BSides Delaware?
Gross.
Yeah.
They have monsters here.
What's up?
They have the monsters here.
Yeah, or yes, upstairs.
You understand the business. It doesn't always work out. No, personally, I can understand industry again better than company that have right?
We'll just get started.
Or you can be like, I
What's up?
was in the car business.
2:30. 2:30.
Oh, you're here early.
Why are you calling this? He's like, oh, why are you calling this? Like,
I thought I was doing that since I was getting the recording when we were starting. Like, you know what? We had a shame, yeah.
in a myriad of roles.
There we go. I'm trying to get. And we're having technical difficulties. Yay. Get it to come up on the projector will be good. I don't know what's on.
You probably have it in extend mode, that's probably why.
Okay, let me see if I can get it back here.
There we go, it's on the projector. It's on your laptop.
Oh yeah, something. Let's see if I can get this.
Oh.
Oh. It looks good here, it looks terrible up there. Terrible or not, I'm just going to go with it. Doesn't matter how it looks. So, one, thank you all for coming to Security BSides Delaware. Thank you all for hearing my talk. And hopefully you learned something new. If anything you learned, I'll not to give a presentation. So what am I talking about today? IPlog, a beginner's IDS for the win. IPlog is an open source project. It gives the beginning level sysadmin actionable network intelligence without the complexities of more advanced IDS solutions. And speaking of not knowing how to give a presentation, I need to slow down just a little bit here. So what I'm going to do is start out with talking about some of the other more well-known solutions, and then we'll end talking about IP. So actionable and timely intelligence. This is the sole purpose of an IDS solution. If you are not getting actionable intelligence out of your IDS, if you're not getting it in a timely manner, your IDS solution is simply not working. So what are the solutions that are available? Suricata. You can also deploy TCP, PDump, Wireshark, Snort, IPlog. And I'm going to go grab some water. Yeah, I told you I didn't know what I was doing.
You speak louder, it's hard for me.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you very much. Yes, I'll try to speak louder so everybody in the back there can hear me too. Sorry about that. So, as I said, the open source solutions are Suricata, TCP dump, Snort, IPlog, and there are probably some other ones that I don't know about. So, what's wrong with Suricata? I really don't know. All I know about that solution is that it exists. If you have experience deploying Suricata, and you know of some pitfalls in the deployment that would hamper it from giving you actionable or timely intelligence, you can save that for the Q&A at the end of the talk. You will be able to add value. So I'll move right on. So what's wrong with TCP dump or Wireshark? Well, for the beginning level sysadmin, most of them probably can't read a PCAP like a storybook. You know, they can't just open that file and know what's going on. Most of them can't dissect TCP IP or other network protocols in their head. And we are at a BSides, so probably some of us can. Probably the guys downstairs doing the CTF definitely can. But then we come to the problem, if we can conquer the skills barrier, we have speed. Can you do it at 10 megabits a second? No, not really. So yes, TCP dump will give you PCAPs. You will be able to tell what's going on your network, but probably not in a timely manner. Snort, complexity. That is the biggest problem with deploying Snort. One, Snort itself has lots of options. I have very few dead tree versions of software manuals on my desk. The Snort manual is one of them, and I still don't know or understand everything that Snort can do out of the box. Next, you go to rule management. An IDS solution without rules is kind of like a crossbow without bolts. You can't kill anything with it. At least you can't shoot anything with it. You can't use it the way it was designed. So you need to have a rule set. You need to decide what rule set you're going to use. There's the community rule set, which I believe is somewhat outdated. The emerging threats rule set, which is an excellent rule set. I highly recommend it. The BRT rule set, or if you are one of these people who can read a PCAP like a storybook, one of these people who are very smart, you can build your own rule sets for this. That's great, and that's a lot of fun to do. I've tried. I've never had much success building my own rules for Snort. Then you have a rule update solution. So let's see. We have an IDS engine that we're deploying. We're deploying a rule set. Now we have to keep these rules current because the threat landscape out there changes. It doesn't stay still. It's always, new things are coming out. Old things are coming back slightly changed. The bad guys are always trying to evade the rules. So the rule sets are always changing. So you need to keep the rule sets current. So we have deployed the IDS engine, the rule sets, and a rule set update solution. Some of those that are available are Orange Master and Cold Core, and there may be more that I don't know about. And we haven't yet gotten to getting actionable or timely intelligence out of Snort. We're just trying to set the thing up. All right, we've got our rule sets. Now we're going to get data, lots of data initially. And if you are in this situation where you deploy a lot of Snort sensors, lots of data times the number of sensors you are deploying, which means to search that efficiently, you're going to probably have to deploy a database. Open source solutions are MySQL or PostgreSQL. I believe the latest versions of Snort do not support dumping the Snort alert logs directly to the database. You have to have some kind of middle software connecting to the database. Barnyard 2 is the one that I know of. There may be more. As I said, I don't know everything that's out there. And we're still not to the point where we're getting actionable or timely data out of our IDS. We are just deploying software after software after software. And finally, we'll need a web app to get the data out of Snore, which means we have to deploy a web server and the web app itself. Base, that's somewhat outdated. Then there's Snorby and Squill, which are software that can get you actionable data out of a Snore installation. So we've deployed our IDS solution, rule set update solution, a database, software to connect to the database for each of our sensors, a web app. We can finally get actionable intelligence out of our IDS. We can finally get it in a timely manner out of our IDS. Of course, that is once you've tuned your rule sets to eliminate the noise. I mean, this is my experience with Snore. You know, I was getting all this data, and most of it was stuff I didn't care about. Like, I had a website. I don't care if somebody's grabbing my robot's text file. That's irrelevant. I put it there. I expect people to grab search engines, especially, to get that. Another thing is like, as I said earlier, the landscape of stuff changes. Like in our shop a year ago, we started using Dropbox internally. All of a sudden, our rule set alert count went up. Realized that the emerging threats policy Dropbox rules were firing like crazy. And I don't care about that. I know I'm using that. So that's the problem with Snore. Snore is a great product, but it's the learning curve and the complexity of deploying that and getting actionable and timely intelligence out of that can be daunting. And especially for the beginning level system. And so if you're just starting out, you don't know much about networks, you don't know anything about keycaps or how the protocols work, but you want to find out what is going on in your network. What could you use? That's where IPlog comes in. Now, what is IPlog? It's open source software. It was originally written by Ryan McCabe in 2000. He stopped development at version 2.2.3. Okay, there's a link to the old code base there. It's simple, but it's not PC dump. Basically what it does, it's a connection logger. A packet comes in, it will log what happened. How am I doing here? Okay, I could slow down just a little bit more. So, as I said, connection logging. It also has some scan detections. It can detect port and SYN scans, null scans, bin scans, XMIS scans, UDP scans, attacks. It can detect ping, floods, and Smurf attacks, fragmentation attacks, also the bogus attacks with bogus TCP flags. It experimentally can evade Nmap scans. I don't know. I've never played with that particular capability of it, but that's what it can do. So if you're a beginning level sysadmin, this will be able to tell you very quickly what's going on your network. So what does it have for logging? As kind of like Snort, this will generate lots of data. It can log to syslog. I don't recommend that. I'd say dump to a regular text file. Dump to the regular text file. Then you can feed it to a scripting language and parse it and get actionable intelligence out of this. As what was that guy's name? Marcus Carey mentioned, learn a scripting language, especially if you're a beginning level sysadmin. Learn a scripting language. I taught myself Perl parsing logs that look like this. And as you can see, it is, we got some bogus TCP flags, some scans going on. Somebody's attacking Slammer, the SQL port probably. Let's see, miscellaneous stuff. You can filter out noise. Here's a config example where I'm filtering out return answers from the GTLD name servers. I don't care about those, so I don't need to process them in my logs. I contacted the original author a couple years ago and asked him about continuing the project. He gave me permission to do that. A newer version that compiles on modern systems has been released on my site, cmpublishers.com, in the directory /OSS, that's open source software. One thing all I've done to it so far is made some changes so it would compile on a modern Debian system, and then I cleaned up the log messages a bit. As you can see back here, going backwards a bit, for UDP or a TCP packet is a whole different log message for format for each thing. I've tried to standardize that a bit. So that's pretty much IEP log. That's why I think it's a beginner's IDS for the when you don't have a high learning curve to get data out of it that you can start using. When I started parsing IEP log data, I didn't have Perl scripts. I didn't even know Perl. I was just reading the files and then building firewall rules based on what I was reading in the log files. So that's pretty much it. My contact information, nathan@publishers.com. You can find me on Twitter at Christ_media. I'm also on LinkedIn. Some of my previous presentations are available on SlideShare. Check those out. Thanks. I'd like to thank first my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ for giving us an entire universe to hack, the mental capacity to ask the question why, and the skills and the ability to find out the answer to that question. Without him, no BSides Delaware, no BSides anywhere. I'd like to thank the staff of BSides Delaware for one, inviting me to come down and talk, for putting on an awesome conference. I was here last year, had a blast, and I'm not disappointed that I came this year. I want to thank Ryan McCabe for writing some very useful software that helped me out when I was just starting out, and for allowing me to continue his awesome work. Q&A, because I always forget, so it's in my slide deck. Anyone have any questions? Okay. Well, you guys have a great time. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Make sure you send the slides to us so we can have a copy, because one of our tools isn't working, which pulls them from.
I think I got to. Yeah, I got 2 minutes. We'll give them 2 minutes. So if the video is on, there'll be video feed of me playing on my phone. It'll be just like me giving a presentation, but Dart, really? That's what you're going with? You know you can trade letters and stuff too. One shoot you.
Huh? Dart?
Sorry, get my water out of here.
Yeah.
Go off in this direction. Thanks, that's such a charming photo. Oh, yay. room started clearing out. Perfect. It's faster than last year. It took me 15 minutes for somebody to walk out last year. I didn't even start talking. The oldest of three. I remind you of this every time. Still.
Yes, but I do know what noises he challenged.
5 more minutes.
Yeah, wait.
No point in rushing. I'm going to get into this in 40 minutes.
I can't figure out how to make this darn thing move up like it should again. That thing there, this should be up over there. I can't get it to do that. What am I doing wrong? Probably text or something.
I didn't know you were using this program. This is the record if I do want to.
They want that, I know. Is that, am I texting you? Who am I texting?
I don't know, you're not texting me though. I came up here because you pointed at me, but I do know this. I don't know it well. But
Because apparently I've been streaming the responses for like the past 3 presentations. And I'm like, oops.
it's very hard to program. It's free though. So what kind of D&D are we talking about? More of, are we talking about the more role-playing D&D or the more strategic turn-based D&D? Okay.
It's okay to start early. And it's time for questions.
Oh no, this will go fast. All right, well it's 4 o'clock anyway, so we'll get started. Welcome. My name is Joey. Lost Knowledge. This presentation is what Dungeons and Dragons taught me about InfoSec. So I start out every slide with pictures that kind of try to describe me. Thank you, Frank. I appreciate that. Silence. It's great. So just a little bit background. I'm really a 12-year-old stuck in a 32-year-old man's body. I like Legos. I like Star Wars. I like science fiction, Star Trek. I like bourbon. Yes, bourbon. I like good cigars. So in addition to having a really good love of bourbon, I also put on an event at Derby County Beer called Bourbon Con. We've done the last couple of years at the Golf House on Friday night. So it's how much I like it. Came to a D&D talk about giving something to describe myself in D&D terms. Though I do believe my alignment's starting to shift a little bit, I kind of tend to mostly fall towards chaotic neutral. In the end, it's more about me. I'm allowed to be self-portrayed. So disclaimers. I actually think I've got a talking to once about one of my presentations, and that's how it's fun to pin. So all views and opinions in this presentation are my own and do not reflect the opinions or beliefs of my employer or any other affiliated organizations. So don't write angry letters to them, write them to me, please. I like it. It feeds me. So what is Dungeons and Dragons? If you've never played, actually, I forgot to ask that question. How many in the room have actually played Dungeons and Dragons before? All right, good. Good majority. You're at a hacker. No, so I originally gave this presentation. I thought the Venn diagram of like Dungeons and Dragons players and like D&D players would be like very like thought, oh, it must almost be the same circle. No, actually, I think the first time in the presentation, 2 people in the room actually answered that as an affirmative. In a room of like 20, 30 some odd people. So I was a little surprised. But you know, it's a standard role-playing game. You know, before we had computers, you know, role-playing games weren't World of Warcraft. They were, you know, dices, character sheets, lots of rule books, and all these things came together in little adventures. As with most of my presentations, I enjoy searching the internet for things. Safe mode, safe search being an optional function of that. So I always like this slide. It's kind of what people actually think of Dungeons and Dragons, the people who play it. You know, I think it's very true. I think it speaks a little bit to the mentality of some of the people, but also to the way that people are perceived. You know, people were. I think this even kind of harkens to the point that Space Rover was talking about earlier today in his talk. He was talking about this perception. You know, he had the quotes from the FBI director and from the head of the Air Force Cyber Command, basically talking about, you know, they very much hinted at these stereotypes of hackers and of IT professionals in general, I think, and so you know, you see a lot of that here in the way people have perceptions. So the first lesson that I kind of take out of Dungeons and Dragons is that it takes a team. You know, and by that, in Dungeons and Dragons, you have your characters. And the important thing to take away from this is, if you've never, whether it's Dungeons and Dragons or modern RPGs like World of Warcraft, you know, PC-based systems, they all have similar constructs, and that's because most of them, in the end, are somewhat based on Dungeons and Dragons. So all those games have different races. Races have different skills and abilities and different traits. They all have different classes which have different skill sets, right? You know, you have combat and physical characters like barbarians and fighters who get in there and beat the crap out of everything. And you have magic users who stand in the back and cast spells and heal people. And so you have these different classes that kind of come together to make a cohesive team, because, you know, one person alone can't necessarily do everything. So whether it's, you know, Dungeons and Dragons, you're going into a dungeon, you know, you've got your dungeon master there leading the story, or, you know, you're playing modern role-playing games and you've got dungeons and raids and all these other things. You know, you can't go in there by yourself. You need to have a team of people. Skills come together to make you stronger than you actually are. Again, searching the internet way too much. I actually did find a picture where somebody had kind of explained the classes within Dungeons and Dragons using the Avengers. So what are classes in InfoSec? So I kind of tried to break this up, kind of give a high-level view of a couple of what I'll call classes. But it's not, strictly speaking, all of them, right? You're going to have developers, guys who are great at code, who build the programs that you're using, who maybe build the exploits that you're using, do pen testing, you know, writing the scripts that you use for automation, whatever else they might be doing. You've got your Metasploit masters, you've got your pen test teams, you have your guys who go in, who do your testing, and whose skill sets are very driven behind those tools and those functions. You have hardware guys, right? You have guys who know the ins and outs of electronics, who know how to configure and maintain the computer systems. The most abstract one I have up here is the network gurus. You know, guys who figure out exactly what's going on without any tool except Wireshark and a couple filters. They're like, this is exactly what's happening. You know, and there's dozens of tools out there that automate lots of that, right? You can ingest all these PCAPs and it'll show you pretty pictures and data flows. But you know, in the end, those things, nothing's perfect. You still have those guys who can just do that. And then you have OS guys, right? Whether that's desktop server-based OS folks or mobile guys. And a lot of times these are overlapped with other areas, right? Because your developers, odds are, going to have some specialty in one or more of the operating systems. Because anymore, with all these mobile constrained architectures, developing is more restrictive than just writing, hey, I wrote ANSI C code that will compile on any system and it should work. So the second it got that difficult, it became more fun. So in Dungeons and Dragons, there's this concept of multi-class. You know, in the real world, we call it the jack of all trades, but it's very, you know, it's this idea of, you know, somebody who's good at multiple things. You know, there's a saying, you know, jack of all trades, master of none. I tend to disagree somewhat with that. I think you can have somebody who has a broad range, and he's maybe not good at all of the skills, but he might be excellent at networking. But when it comes to, you know, he might know nothing about hardware, but he could be, you know, a good dev, or just have, you know, general skills in other areas that may be useful. Another portion of Dungeons and Dragons is alignments. And the first time I did this presentation, I got really bogged down into the alignments, and the second time I did it, I got even further bogged down into it, because this is one of the questions I got asked was, well, I don't understand the alignments. And then I realized that something important, at least from the perspective of this presentation, which is, it doesn't matter. There's a couple slides I have in here that are, seriously?
Sorry, dude. I'm like, hey.
So the important thing here, you know, with all of these isn't so much to get bogged down in the wherewithals and how-tos of how characters and classes and alignments work within Dungeons and Dragons. But the thing I think that is most important, and what I'm trying to get across, is that it takes a mix of all of these things, right? So you can apply, to some extent, people into different areas and alignments. And you have to have that, right? In the end, you need different personalities on the team. If everybody's the exact same and thinks the exact same way and has that same mentality, you don't have somebody who, you may not necessarily have that person who can look at this from a different perspective and be like, well, wait, why are we still doing this the same way? If we did, you know, something else, maybe it would work better. So I did leave this one extra slide in there about alignments to kind of clarify for anybody who really does care. You know, explaining the good versus evil. You know, that one's pretty clear. Most people get the concept. You know, caring and concern for others, protecting the innocent, and all that fun stuff. Whereas evil wants to kill everything and everyone, or take over the world. Lawful and chaotic always gets a little more confusing for folks. So I left this in. You know, but the lawful side, you know, rules, order, tradition. You know, I try to explain the lawful evil because people are like, well, how can you be lawful and evil? And the best way to describe it is the world dominator, you know, the person who has this moral code and structure, but it may be different from everybody else's, but he wants to impose it on everyone, right? He wants the world in kind of his vision, whereas the chaotic evil individual is the world destroyer, right? You know, you don't care. Kind of one of the better examples for chaotic evil is anyone who saw The Dark Knight. The portrayal of the Joker in that movie is pretty spot on for chaotic evil. And so what did I do? I had to make a version of this that has alignments and info set. So you know, I tried to break it down a little bit. The good on the top, and I'm, you know, because of some of my background, I'm a little biased, but you know, it's basically all your different types of testing teams, right? So CNA, your certification guys, they're going to be lawful good, right? They have a set of rules. They want to follow those rules and make sure everything gets checked off and everything's done right. That meets those rules. They're not, you know, they're just like, okay, this is good, this is good, this is good. It all looks good. There you go. Neutral good, you know, I kind of put blue teams there. And the reason I said that, put that there was, they're not quite following the rule of doing CNA work, but on the same side, they're not where I say that think the red teams are, which is when you have a red team who's doing a true penetration test, they need to be looking at your networks in the same methods and ways that your black hats and your white hats are going to, particularly your black hats, your main adversaries are going to attack your network, right? So they have to be more on the chaotic side. And in the end, within your organization, within your groups, those are always going to be perceived as the good, right? They're the ones trying to make better. You know, some of your admins and your help desk folks are probably going to see them as evil because they come in, break everything, and now they get stuck fixing it, right? Lawful neutral, the Lego blocks are developers because I couldn't find another good picture for a developer. The help desk is true neutral, white hats, chaotic neutral. The bottom, the lawful evil, those are the bosses, right? They have the rule, they have the order, but ultimately they sometimes get in the way, right? I put neutral evil as the lawyers. You know, you would think they'd be the lawful evil, but you know, it's to them it's more, you know, about keeping the company, keeping your butt out of jail and out of trouble than it is, you know, anything else. And then chaotic evil is the black hats. You know, these are the guys who, in the end, want to break into your networks. They're the ones who want to, you know, steal information. They want to deface your websites, whatever nefarious reason they might have. You know, whether it's just for the giggles or for the lulz. You know, that's ultimately you know, those are your enemies, I suppose. So the second lesson I have from Dungeon Patrol. You need a good director, and this is where the Dungeon Master comes in. So for those who haven't played before, you know, the Dungeon Master is the one who's created the scenarios that you're playing in, who's depending on how evil he is. I've had some whose main purpose in life is to make sure you all die. Others want to see you progress and then kill you. So it's really, you know, this is what's behind that little screen. You know, it's all the scheming, all the plans. And I think that's the important thing, right? This is the person who has the plan and has the vision of what needs to be done. And a lot of times, the other side, it's the players, the ones actually playing the game, whose job it is to actually execute it, right? In the end, how many of us have managers who are actually, you know, doing the day-to-day technical work? I know there are some, but it's not all of them. It's, you know, leading the way, herding cats. It's quite the reality. I'm in my second run around as a manager, and trying to get everybody in the same place at the same time to do the same thing or even something similar to the same thing is very hard, right? If you've hung out with people at hacker conferences, it's, again, very similar, right? How do you get everybody moving in the same direction at the same time? Yeah. Even then, I'm pretty sure if you pulled the fire alarm right now, there'd be a couple hackers looking around like, I don't smell. Yeah, I don't smell smoke. Yeah, okay, we're good. Yeah, the laptop. Let's go. I will admit to coming up this time. I don't know if you noticed by the elevator, there's these stacks of recycling bins, and the top one has a cell phone on it. There are no cell phones in it right now. I was a little sad. I was hoping somebody might be dumb enough to leave a cell phone in there. Then I was going to change the whole direction of the talk. We're going to talk about why you don't leave cell phones and recycle them. So we have many dungeon masters, right? You know, people will dictate what we're doing, dictate the story to us. You know, how things are going to be done. Whether it's our customers, whether it's customers external to your company, if you're doing consulting, if you're doing IT support and internal support for your own company, right? Then the other people at your company are your customers. Your team leads, your technical team leads, your troop supervisors, even upper management. Because in the end, you know, as you go up, how much vision they have specifically for you narrows, but their vision overall fits in. So at the upper management level, there's the global, you know, I have this is what the company needs to do. And the supervisors below that all say, okay, well, make this happen. In my group, we need to do this. And so then that leads down to you. And if you have team leads between you and a manager, they filter out, they delegate tasks. You know, they're the ones that keep us truly on track then, right? So all these people kind of dictate the story to us. They're the ones who lead. And if you didn't have this sort of structure, right, then you put 100 guys in a room and try to convince them to all go in one direction. Are they going to go there? Without somebody truly to step up and lead. the odds of them all walking in the same direction are going to be slim to none, or at least in the same general direction. So we get on to the third lesson, and this kind of grows out of, again, me Googling and searching on the internet way too much. So every network is a dungeon, right? I did not have to fabricate these pictures in any way, shape, or form, but I thought they looked incredibly similar for the fact that one is a network diagram and one is a dungeon map. It shows, I think it shows kind of it's a little bit, it is a bit too literal in some sense, but it's kind of a fun diagram to look at. But the reality is, when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, you navigate a dungeon, you go in as a team, you're looking around to find, treasures or save the princess, you can put you something with a pencil, and you go through. I got you to laugh. You go through, and ultimately you're trying to get to your end goal, right? Whatever that is, it varies, but you navigate through from point to point. We do the same thing in networks, right? If you're coming in as a pen tester and you're looking at a network, you're doing the exact same thing. If your end goal is to get back where all the data is stored, you're going to navigate through whichever method is most effective. Sometimes you can walk straight in because there's a giant hole in the wall instead of a door. And other times you have to work a little harder at it. And so that's where the first thing comes in, obstacles. When you go into a dungeon in D&D, you have things that are going to be in your way. They might be doors, they could be walls, they can be traps. We have the same thing in networks, right? We have firewalls, we have, different types of appliances that are all doing the same thing. And to some extent, you can even argue that, while not necessarily directly a strict obstacle, if they're set to block traffic, IDSs and IPSs can become the exact same thing, right? So how do we dodge obstacles? Well, if it's a door in Dungeons and Dragons, you have a rogue who comes and picks a lock, right? He gets you through, and now you're on to the next stage. When you're looking at a network, if you're trying to attack, you're trying to get into a network from the outside, you might be looking for places and different points to where you have to pivot in from. Oh, I got one machine, and now I need to try to use that to get from where I'm going. So it's not necessarily a straight A to B. And so, we work around obstacles, right? And sometimes you might just turn them off. If you don't have a road to pick a lock, you throw a barbarian at the door until it falls open. Which comes to traps. Whether it's the Indiana Jones style giant rolling ball, or it's honeypots or other defensive mechanisms designed to lure you away from your ultimate target. It's all ways to try to capture your attention and keep you from getting to where you want to go. In the end, I guess they're just other forms of obstacles. Sometimes you just have to run away. There's creatures, right? In a good dungeon, you have different types of creatures. If you've never played D&D, there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, within the various books and rule guides, and then your dungeon master can also be evil and wicked and come up with his own shit. Excuse me. Whether it's little innocent-looking kobolds or skeletons or the ferocious dragon, you have different things. You have different creatures again, who are always occupying and in your way. So I try to create some creatures of InfoSec, and this is where you have your IDS, your IPSs, your antivirus, your SIEMs, anything doing log collection, any of those sorts of things that are monitoring and watching the network. That they may not necessarily, unlike the creatures in a dungeon, which could actually literally kill you. More times than not, these are going to just alert you to the fact that somebody's there, and somebody else is going to come in and kill you afterwards. But in the end, all these pieces come together, and so you get this view where you're trying to get to a goal, and that goal is your treasure, right? So, in a network, this treasure could be anything, right? If the main person who's going to be attacking your network is people who just wanted to face your website, maybe the goal is just your web server. If you actually have real proprietary data or personal information within the network that people might want, then that probably becomes the treasure. In Dungeons and Dragons, it's always it's almost always just gold and armor and the same sort of stuff you'd find in any role-playing game. Right? In the end, your goal is to get something. Sometimes there might be more altruistic methods. You might be trying to save a village, but and kill the dragon. And usually that has a side effect of coming with lots of gold. So the fourth lesson, using your imagination, or playing the game, as it were, right? Here's this map again. How do you go from pieces of paper and little markers on there to seeing your team and seeing your group come together and destroy a dragon? Well, we have to use our imagination, right? If you don't have the imagination, then Dungeons and Dragons isn't going to be much fun. So what's the reality of computers? And I hate the very cliche image, but it's there. When we interact with computer systems and electronics in general, we have some sort of human usable interface, right? But the reality is that human usable interface is just a cover for what's actually going on. And this goes all the way down to both working on computer systems to looking at network and traffic data. My background from college was in networking, and I think I'm probably one of the few people who actually likes looking at network traffic at the data link layer, going all the way down and looking at Ethernet frames and curse you, double E. But the reality is even that's not everything, right? I mean, the reality is the physical layer, depending on which media you're using, that signal is sent in one of various methods, right? Over Ethernet, the voltages along the wire are modulated to represent bits. Over wireless, the signals are changed amplitudes and frequencies in order to accommodate the same concept, right? So we have to, in some ways, abstract this because it's not something we can work with. So this also leads to solving problems. Just two pictures again. I love Googling. So the keyboard not found, press F1 to resume, or using 6 different adapters so that you can put your micro SD card into a computer system and read it out. But ultimately, when you're doing Dungeons and Dragons, whether you're running into a trap or you run into a wall or something gets in your way that keeps you from going where you're going, when we have in InfoSec, we have problems we have to solve, right? Things don't always work the way they're supposed to. It's one of those oddball little things that drives most of us nuts, I'm sure. Which kind of feeds us nicely into lesson 5, which is the elements of chance. Nothing ever goes the way you expect it to. I think anybody who's ever worked with a computer is well aware that even some of us who are really experts every once in a while fix something by magic, right? We don't know why it wasn't working 5 minutes ago, but I just did X and now it works again. So in Dungeons and Dragons, so kind of showed at the beginning, one of the elements was all the dice sitting on the table. So everything in the game is based on this system of chance. You have a character sheet that has certain stats and points in it, but in the end, in order for you to do anything, you have to pick up one of these dice and roll it. And if it's a bad night, you're cursing the whole time. So again, more great pictures. In Dungeons and Dragons, the dice have the ultimate control. When you're doing character creation, you roll the dice to get your stat points. When you go into combat, when you perform any actions, you roll the dice to see if you hit what you're going to hit. when you go to hit something, you roll your damage, and there's nothing more frustrating than having the big hulking barbarian swing and miss and roll a 1 and then chop the head off of his friend. In InfoSec, it's the same way, right? We have devices that break, we have equipment that won't work. There'll be code that doesn't compile, an exploit that won't run, a blue screen at the blue screen. Whatever it is, we run into these problems, right? So it's always not clear cut. Sure, 90% of the time you might go in and run the same 5 commands on every computer, and it's going to work perfectly. But the next week you go back and you do it, and it could be, you did it one day, Patch Tuesday came around, you come back the next week, and something's not working again. It's always fun to try to figure out what broke. And then there's just Murphy's Law. Anything that can possibly go wrong will. There's plenty of lists on the internet of Murphy's Laws of combat and Dungeons and Dragons and everything else, and there's probably 10 times as many for Murphy's Laws of computing. Apparently some very angry sysadmins exist out there who have nothing to do in their free time except write lists. Let's hope they don't have lists of names. So the summary. Let's make sure I get through my fast and needed. So there's 5 lessons, right? It takes a team. Having a group of people who can work together, who have different skills, who can come together and together be better than they would be as individuals. The funny thing about it takes a team is I probably took a lot longer in life to learn that one than I should have. I'll be the first to admit that up until probably about
5 years ago?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for keeping me honest. Yeah, that would be about right. Until about 5 years ago, yeah, more times than not, my mentality was I can do it faster by myself with less people to get in my way. And I probably messed up some crap along the way. But you need a director. You need somebody to keep you straight, going in the right direction. Every network is a dungeon. You have to use your imagination. And as I learn every day, nothing ever goes the way you expect it to. And that's just the harsh reality of things. So I put up a thank you slide. I added this because I failed to do this with every other time. The other times I've done this presentation this year. So this is going to be the big retirement of this presentation. It kind of makes me hurt that I gave it 4 times. But much like Space Rogue said this morning, how Janice came up and asked him at DerbyCon to submit a talk. I got it too, but it definitely felt a little threatening. I'm not saying she threatened me with harm, but it definitely was kind of like, yeah, you should really submit because not everybody goes to every conference. And she's like, I'm sitting down and she's standing up, which is the only way she could be looking down at me. And it was a little intimidating. That's all I'm going to say. But I would like to thank BSides Delaware for having me here. It's the 2nd year in a row to present, and I like to think I actually taught somebody something this year. Last year, I think I just tried to anger people and get them out of the room. Thank DerbyCon, Sky.con, Outer Zone. They all allowed me the opportunity to get up here and try to impart some knowledge. Don't know if it was much, but if somebody takes something away, that's better than nothing else. I have a couple more things, and he won't like it, but I'd like to thank Spiky Geek for all the feedback. Yes, I knew he would do that. For all the feedback, and I'm sure I'll get it again. I'd also like to thank him and Fozzie Hacks for heckling me from the couch at Sky.con. But it was an effective heckling and not mean-spirited, so I appreciated it. I'd like to thank everyone who's here today for coming and listening to what I have to say, and anyone else who may be watching who attended my talk earlier in the year and who I failed to thank. So, does anyone have any questions? I managed to get through in 30 minutes. I'm sorry. Yes?
On your creatures page,
Uh-huh.
for the InfoSec creatures,
Uh-huh.
who's the creature
So Alien Vault is the new name of.
Left.
Oh,
Bro
left.
idea.
That's
Your
Bro.
mother left.
What?
That's
Bro.
Bro.
Oh, that's bro.
Really?
That's not.
Ask Liam that next time you see
Well,
us.
the problem
No,
is.
you get
You
you
get
get
cherry
on
DOS
station.
first,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so then your brain stopped functioning.
You don't drop that on the command line.
That's a vision they were asking. I know, I've never seen that.
I think I've only ever seen it, I think I've only ever seen the DRO. DRO.
Yeah. They may have changed the logo of the.
No, that's.
But is that still what they're using? Okay. Yeah, it's on the webpage. Like I was like, okay, I may have seen the logo once. It's kind of scary. It's scary.
Yeah, it's weird. It's not, I mean, it's.
That Ethernet cable or Mac truck?
No, that's a Ethernet cable coming out of it.
No shit, right?
It's crying Ethernet tears. You see that? It's crying Ethernet tears.
You would think I know this is outside of the stock one.
You haven't said to it before.
I like the breakdown. I don't know if like D&D is all what it makes sense. And I got totally wrapped up on this slide.
Obvious. Anybody else have any other questions? Nothing? Well, thank you all again.
Yay!
That's the projector.
Screen real. Can you really get shoved down and pop a window like that? There's no way.
I don't think
There's
so.
no fucking way.
What, have an error on a blue screen?
Yeah.
So I've seen a couple images on the internet, so I can't confirm nor deny that
It
they're
must be
legitimate.
true.
Yes, it must be true. I do want to say I've actually had somebody show me it happen, but I can't recall where.
Like maybe if you're emulating it in something, like if you're
And I think that was the
running
case.
it as an emulator,
So,
not-
right, I think, well, actually, in one of the cases, I think it was a really old, like, it was VMs back before they were like, before there was, you know, BTX and everything else that is dependent all that down to the processor. And
Yeah.
when virtualization sucked.
All right, I'll buy that.
Sucked more.
That should be
Yeah.
Thank you.
Blue screen, yeah.
Another attempt to Hyper-V. It's the most exciting.
Sucked more. I mean,
Yeah.
Now I can at least play games.
It's, oh, that looked good. Yeah. Oh, do you?
What?
My it's i7 with 8 gigs of RAM. It's not bad. I had that the Lenovo one where you can actually take the screen off and all the processor was up on it. I think it was, and it was an i7. I think it was freaking awesome. It's I mean, for a little room. I've been really impressed with it as well. Yeah, my own Surface. And it saves. You have a Surface in the wild? Holy shit! They exist! Wow! It's not just that's the first one I've seen that wasn't on a television program. Only all the NFL guys have to use them and everything. I've got a couple of the Surface RTs, but I got one because I wanted to see how bad it was. The toy was style, and like I wanted to use it just as a for the DVR. House. Yeah, and of course, it won't even, this is like an ID, and then I got one ultra cheap last year at the summit because they couldn't give them away, so they gave us huge discount. They're like, well, so is that free? That's free for us. You like it? Yeah. How's the heat on that? The one I never is.
This is the i5. Not the i7.
Okay. Yeah.
The i7 I've heard can over.
You can
The i5, the battery or the processor management stuff like that on 5 is no big deal.
Really?
Yeah.
Keyword.
I got the regular keyboard there.
Not the. That's the type, not the type.
Yes, it's the type. Yeah, I can't handle it.
This is, you just got on it.
What you found?
Yeah. It's those crowdsourced wiki and
Last 2 months he's been putting on about how many months.
those have to do with
His phone died yesterday.
Hey, midfield is now been suggested.
Now, of course.
How does that not make that come
I
out?
mean, I get it. Like,
I'll have to go back
Which
and.
is really
I
you like
usually
crowdsourcing.
up on Twitter on that.
Well, the original list was crowdsourced from people
well, I
like
mean, he's basically posting like
3 and 4 years.
just my guys, IPs, credits,
spec.
IRC checks, their CNC, like
people who are going to be respectful of the situation. And Alex and one that,
10, 20 every day.
this
This is how people are asking how he writes like 2 blog posts. Part 2 and 3 has come out, and each one is
probably doing shit. Maybe just go to the cybersecurity hall of fame and pick all the
I mean, it's not complicated. He's using the IDS logs,
Richard Clark,
taking a look at RFI, and pulling creds out of it.
he belongs on
Because they all have creds for malware
Cybersecurity Hall of Fame.
implant.
I don't know if he belongs.
Most of them are like OpenFTP servers or open serve malware on the website.
I was looking at like the cybersecurity hall of fame inductees, and like I have no idea who these people are.
Where
I've been doing this for 20 years, that might
download
consider
whatever it
myself
is.
reasonably intelligent in space. I don't know.
You
These
know,
guys.
run strings run through.
Oh, and what's his name?
Do this or whatever.
That wrote us
Figure out what it's pointing out to.
got inducted.
Most all of that.
And like 2
There's a
days
lot of,
later, 2 days later, it was not something you want on your wrist.
I've been finding a lot of those botnets.
Ah, dude.
The joke keeps coming up. It keeps coming up over and over and over. He's probably not. He's probably posted 100, 150 on that botnet alone. Like he's
further and better than that.
he's been doing a lot. But all I mean,
I love Steph.
somebody doesn't care. They let him post.
Because like he's so irreverent, like he just is not.
All he does all day is
I'm
look
gonna
at
talk about
ideas
pure
and
science,
then
and
do
then here's
research
some
based on
TNA, and here's a real off-color joke. And like,
And we were joking, like, he should take all his tweets and parse them. He's not even doing the email format. He saw this in the
professor of
professor.
pure science,
I mean,
it's professor of
it's
philosophy
getting there.
and communications. And like,
swear.
there's one of my favorite Twitter exchanges ever. Was when Kraft Lopes basically said he was stupid. Right? It's, oh God!
Yeah, but I mean, like, this BSides lets you have all sorts of like off the wall. We had 2 talks about cooking this morning.
All right, guys, gonna get started.
Cook like a hacker.
So, if you don't know me, hi, my name is Stacy.
Hi, Stacey.
Hi,
I'm an alcoholic.
With a hacking problem, right?
I actually have like 5-step programs.
So, welcome to Securing Your Assets from Espionage. Stop the pillaging, keep your booty. General disclaimer. Yeah, anything I say doesn't reflect on past, present, future employers. This is all me. It's all my fault. If you don't know me, here's the requisite line of certifications that I hold. I've been doing IT for 16 years, spent the last 12 as a government contractor. So a lot of the experience and stories that I will pull from are from mostly that range. And yes, there's a lot of pirate theme along the way. And you'll also see some office space stuff too. I'll make it fun. So I'm gonna go over, what business espionage is, discuss targets, methods, and countermeasures that we can deploy for this. Of course, to really understand, this quote by Aldrich Ames really sums up the whole essence of things. So espionage, for the most part, involves finding a person who knows something or has something that you can get them to secretly give to you that almost always involves a betrayal of trust. Because we all know, people, you are the weakest link. It doesn't matter who you are, what your role is. We're the weakest link in the chain, and we're the biggest exploit vector out there. Just to kind of highlight what this is, it is a concern. It always has been. But it continues to grow. It's a big moneymaker. So, and this one's just from the end of October. So the Department of Justice, they are reorganizing for their cyber and corporate espionage. Because obviously, this is important. It's, you know, the requisite cyber. We're having a lot more threats as we become even more dependent upon all things technology, all things internet. Our lives are very internet-based. You can't even go out to dinner with your friends without there being a substantial amount of time spent on your smartphone, checking in, tweeting, posting to Facebook. Yeah, we all need our selfies. And along with that, you know, corporate espionage, again, it's a huge moneymaker. Well, money saver too. But we'll get into that. And one other thing, also in the news, just this week. So they're looking at expanding laws around the Espionage Act to include civil lawsuits, not just federal lawsuits. So if this gets passed, we're going to be seeing a lot more lawsuits along the lines of, you know, perhaps the way patent trolls have gone in terms of corporate espionage. So this is really going to be a real hot button issue if this gets traction and it passes and gets put into law. So something to be aware of, especially with a lot of the things that get wrote into NDAs that we're required to sign on almost each and every project. So, you know, kind of keep this in mind. So start off with the essential underpinnings. So back in 1996, the Economic Espionage Act was passed, and this allowed the federal government to, you know, prosecute in terms of theft of trade secrets and actually, you know, get something done. And this is at a federal level. So imagine this happening at the civil level if things start getting expanded. All those lawyers you know that don't have jobs might have jobs again. And this really revolves a lot around trade secrets. And trade secrets, these are different than things that have been patented. Patents are out there. You can see them, you can see what's involved. Doesn't necessarily give away all the secret sauce, but it gives you so much information. Trade secrets, however, have not been documented. You know, these are things like, you know, Coke, Pepsi recipe, Bush baked beans, you know, all these secret recipes that are held nearest and dearest. So, yeah. It's one of those, it's not documented, and if anyone gets their hands on it, there is potential for some money to exchange hands. Which of course leads us into our driving forces. So, corporations, and whether they're locally based in the States or maybe foreign corporations, a lot of the drive is, of course, money. If you're in a very fiercely fought field and you have something new and hot to bring to the market, you're going to have a research and development curve. You're going to be investing a lot of money. If you can shave several years off of that, that's a big moneymaker. And if you can take what your competition has done already, leapfrog off of that and get to market sooner, you've already created the market name, knowledge, and locked it in with you. And that's a huge gain. Of course, our individuals, our weakest links, you know, they're in it for the typical things. And you see this across the board, whether it's corporate espionage, you know, national secrets, it doesn't really matter. It's the same motivators. They might want more money. Someone's offering them whatever they find to be a fabulous payday. Frankly, looking at the history of what people have sold stuff for, I think they're idiots. The risk does not come anywhere close to being worth what? Other things, blackmail. This is a traditional one. Get someone to feel guilty about pretty much anything. Hey, it's a weak point. Revenge. Sometimes people just don't like where they are or who they're working for or with, and they want to do something about it instead of, just slashing tires or putting shaving cream in someone's car. And then, of course, there's things like accidental disclosure, where it's unintentional and it's just stupid human tricks. People are lazy by nature. People don't think about what they're doing. They're just thinking about, hey, I need to get this done. And that can inadvertently create an exposure.
Player request.
Oh, yes. FOIA requests, too. That's one of those things need to be reviewed in terms of classification levels on a continual status. And, yeah, that also kind of falls into human fallacy for not being aware of expiration dates. So we have targets. Of course, these are everything that people are going to be going for. Now, trade secrets, these are near and dear, so of course, these will be one of the primary targets. It's not documented, so if you can get it, there's good money. Client lists, you may not think that a client list could do something for you, but you got some product that you're trying to sell, and you're trying to make an inroads into a certain sector. Having a client list for your competition, it opens up a whole new amount of people that you can sell to potentially. And you can also start poking around and try to undercut them. That's a big part of the competition. Anyone that's in government contracting knows about lowest cost. It's a big factor in determining pretty much anything and everything in life for what you're going to buy. Why do we go to Walmart sometimes instead of Target? Personnel records. This kind of plays into brain drain. If you're targeting a company, let's see who's working on project team A, and we'll start circling and start making them job offers. Just bring them over. It's another way to play the game in terms of research. Of course, business development and marketing. This can include things such as pricing lists. When you're doing competitive bidding, this can be a real leg up. Of course, in government contracting, if the company is caught with having that insider knowledge of pricing, it also gets you kicked out. Doing too much bad stuff can get you disbarred from government contracting too. And of course, research and development, that's always a major target. How many times are the Chinese hacking into us in order to get, the latest and greatest plan specifications? I think there was one just the other week, actually. Of course, along with this, we have our threats. So we have, obviously, the outsiders. And this is what we're mostly familiar with. We have all of our threat vectors, everyone trying to hack in, get into the networks, and steal everything. But one of our biggest concerns, actually, and our biggest threat, is our insiders, simply because they already have authorized access. And this is where you're going to see a lot of your weakest links come into play. How many people point and click on things that they shouldn't? Perfect example right there.
No.
Click on everything.
So there's no resumes in my area?
The Nigerian princess, you want to give me $10 million?
No, he wants to give you $20 million. You just need to send your bank account, your firstborn son.
What about that resume I sent you?
Yeah, even things, you can embed bad stuff in anything. Suddenly getting a resume out of nowhere. Maybe you should check that.
It's okay, it's PDF.
Nothing bad ever came in a PDF. What are you talking about? Foreign governments. Yeah, this can be a governmental concern as well as business concern, because we have a lot of government contractor companies. So by extension, they're also getting targeted for developing planes, tanks, Humvees, nice little rockets. There's a lot of stuff out there that's in the corporate sector that we get a lot of the bleed over. And of course, I really need to change this to say crackers instead of hackers. But yeah, I forgot to, my bad. But yes, crackers. People out there doing all the bad stuff, either for fun, for pay, or thinking that they're righting the wrongs. Yes, all of our hacktivists. And some of the key methods that I'll go through, these are just this is the summary of how they break down. So key methods will be Delphi and pretexting attacks, obviously computer hacking, and open source intelligence. And just to keep it a little interesting, I'll try to throw in some scenarios. And with that, assume you've got a company, it's a new technology, it's a highly competitive field, you're making the next greatest version of something that's really sought after. And it's going to make your company millions, but not if the competition steals your stuff and gets to market first. Because if you have to spend 3 years doing the development before you can start selling your product, have an actual working product, and you have to have, say, a team of 10 developers, that's a lot of money. So you have a huge investment, and you really want to protect that investment. So when we're talking about Delphi and pretexting attacks, now this is when people that have really good social engineering and charisma skills, this is where we come into play. This is where we can really shine. And there's so many ways to get information out of people. Well, consider the last time you had a phone call for a survey. Maybe you're getting a phone call from some computer magazine. It's like, well, hey, we want to send you a free subscription. So what kind of operating systems do you have? What kind of software are you running? What kind of networking architecture do you have? Are you running Cisco, Juniper? What's the deal? And you might just be thinking, because they have a nice little breakdown of the different magazine types they have that are specified towards these interests. Networking daily, Unix, Linux, Windows. It's not really, kind of sticking in your filter that there's information that they can get out of this. This is what marketing does, right?
Nothing's free.
Yes, nothing is free. They're getting fabulous information about what your network is like. Because most likely, you're not thinking about this for your home network and stuff that you might want to learn about. You're thinking more like, okay, what do I need to know for my day job? So you're going to be putting in a lot of information that can easily tie back to that. Because guess what? How many of you guys have profiles on LinkedIn? Yeah. This also ties into open source. And so this is all circular information that they can start tying together. Along with this, this does count as an information volunteer when you're answering these surveys. Think too, someone calls up, hey, I was trying to reach Bob. Oh, well, Bob's on vacation this week. Maybe try back on Tuesday. This is another information volunteering that you've just given. And your wily social engineer can now use this, if they're good, they can potentially pose as Bob to someone else, say, oh, hey, yeah, I'm out at this conference. I just locked myself out of my computer, but I need this document so I can go talk to our client who's actually here. Could you send me a copy of this? Just send it to my personal email. Here it is. It's really that simple if you find the right person and you're convincing. Because this is 100% owning your shit. Be confident, be who you say you are, and own it. And you're there. And this is no different than doing a job interview. Right, that's essentially it. Because you want to get paid. You know? It really comes down to, what would you say to you here? Because this is the question they're asking. And you know what? This is what most people are answering, too. So the next time you're presented with a survey, you've got people asking you questions. You know, for the guys out there, you're out at the bar, at a conference. Some chick comes up, starts talking to you. Maybe she's out of your league. Hey, you do that sexy skating stuff. It's hot.
Tell me about it.
It could happen. Obviously, I'm going to have to dye my hair again before I try that. But, yeah, just think about the environment. You know, maybe not have that conference call while you're at Starbucks hanging out because you got bored of working from your living room. You know, it's little things like that. Stop thinking. So, computer hacking, computer abuse, misuse, however you want to classify it, this really encompasses a whole lot of things. You know, 0 days, well, the media likes to make a big thing out of it. It's not our biggest concern. They happen, but you know, really our biggest concern are all these default settings and unpatched machines, if we're being honest. A lot of this has to do with baseline configurations. Dare I say the dreaded compliance word? One thing I've said a few times, compliance is not security, but let me clarify that. Compliance on its own is not the end-all be-all of security. It's a starting point. It's fabulous for giving us a baseline and somewhere to start, so we can all have a standard core to work from, but we really need to use it to reach beyond and stop acting like it's a checkbook. You know, don't just do, okay, passwords, they expire every 90 days, good to go. Well, along with that and your password complexity policy and your general, you know, every year re-education of your employees, maybe start including things such as, hey, don't tape it to the underside of your keyboard. You know, people do that. We tell them, they still do it. You know, us. Start including things, you know, offering them alternatives. A lot of places do, but a lot of places also have the same annual training that does the same stuff every year. So no one really listens to it anymore. We just point and click and get it done. It is what it is. That's all I can say. But you know, it's thinking beyond just what's there and using it as a stepping stone to start. And of course, you know, one thing with all the compliance methods and everyone starting to utilize the NIST baseline, it is giving us a common baseline to utilize. You know, that way if someone's saying, yeah, we've got a moderate rated system, you know what they're coming in with at a base, at least according to them. I would still say double check, because what someone else considers as meeting compliance doesn't necessarily mean it's going to meet your method of meeting compliance. Guidelines are guidelines. They're not set in stone. They're there for flexibility, and that leaves a lot of room for interpretation. During the times I've gone through and done audits, I have reviewed things in a much different way than other reviewers have. And part of that is just simply having different backgrounds. Coming from a system administration background, there's a lot of things I view in a much more technical viewpoint than people that have come in straight into just doing audits. You know, even minor little things for complexity of settings. Just because I have seen people flag it as a issue if you have a more strict control. So there's a lot of issues there. A lot of stuff to still be addressed. Okay, this is the way a lot of us feel at the end of the day. So, yeah. And this is also how systems end up if we're not actually implementing good security. So, just a thought. Open source intelligence, there's a lot of it out there. There's a lot of it coming from companies and government agencies themselves and employees. So, good example of this, if you go on federal BSides, this is where all RFPs over a certain money amount are posted for the federal governments. So, this gives you a whole wealth of knowledge about what they're seeking. There have been at times where it says you need to be able to scan X amount of Windows systems, Linux systems, and it'll give a high-level breakdown. Not everybody that writes RFPs thinks the same way. Not everybody has a security mindset. So there's a lot of information that's out there that can be exploited. You know, back during Cold War, Russian spies came over and simply utilizing a lot of stuff that was in, you know, trade publications, they used that to write up and send back their reports. There's just so much information that's really given simply because there's a whole lot of marketing that needs to be done and a whole lot of, hey, look at this awesome stuff we've done. You know, in terms of things such as even troop movements, you know, you may not think about it, but a newsletter saying, you know, families saying farewell to their loved ones as they deploy, it gives you kind of a heads up. Nowadays, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Back in the day, it meant more, but it's the same sort of information that's being freely given, and we're not being as OPSEC conscious. You know, with the expansion of social media, everybody has become kind of public life. Yeah, it's all out there, for better or worse. Consider how many people post stuff that have cost them their jobs. There's not necessarily a lot of forethought that goes into it. There's so much information you can get. Not necessarily from, you know, but from anybody else that answers the phone. So what can we do for countermeasures to all this? Well, we definitely need to do more training in information security, physical and personnel, and just training overall. Really, it's all training. Because we've all felt this way one time or another. No one's really missing it. So, on the information security front, guidelines. You know, all these fabulous things that are out there. FISMA, you know, NIST, ISO more than PCI. They're all starting points. They give us a baseline that we can work off of, and we can use it as a springboard, and we can improve. Continuous monitoring is the new hot buzzword. You know, we can't just be having, huh?
Nerd said.
Everybody's moving to continuous monitoring. You know, we can't just set a vulnerability scan to go every quarter and not look at it and say, yeah, it's going, we're good. That means we're compliant, right?
BCI thinks so.
Technically compliant versus real world compliant is how I would put it. It's like, you might meet someone's loose definition of compliant, but if you're not doing the follow-up, you're not looking at your results, you're not resolving your vulnerabilities, you're not compliant. But to a lot of people, simply having that vulnerability scan that scans and sits there, yeah, check. That's not how compliance works. Not if I'm your auditor. Encryption, encryption at rest, encryption in motion. Encrypt everything. There's probably backdoors and everything, but at least it gives them something more to work on. We want to make it harder. You know, you don't want to have a situation where the intern's taking the backup tapes to the storage facility in their car. They stop, they go get Subway. Someone breaks into the car, takes them. Hey, backup tapes weren't encrypted. Oh shit. There goes 50,000 social security numbers and everything else someone needs for identity theft. Those are the kind of things that get you really bad publicity that you don't want. And it still happens. That's the sad thing. It still happens. Yeah? There's no lessons learned. I mean, there's lessons learned, but no one's actually learning and implementing from it. Because security costs money. We're a cost center, we're not a profit center. So we kind of get the end of the budget. It sucks, and we really need to work on changing that.
Security's insurance. Everyone hates insurance.
Yes, that's a good analogy. Security is insurance.
Corporate espionage.
Well, none of civil penalties are starting. You know, implementing intrusion detection systems, passive, active scanning, you know, more monitoring. It's another one of those things that gets fought over. Oh, it's going to clog up the network. No, just do it. Unfortunately, executives kind of don't like that no, just do it answer. So this is where you need someone to schmooze them a little bit more. And proper data classifications, you know, mentioning FOIA requests. You know, when something has been classified as a certain level, there needs to be a periodic review, and especially when it's something that could be requested, there should be a review before it reaches that deadline. But part of the whole thing with proper data classification is a lot of stuff gets classified higher than it should be, which causes a glut of information to have to review. And that's where you start getting all these holes in terms of, you know, it's not being reviewed because there's too much to go through. So there's a whole lot of issues that contribute on both sides. You know, because along with that, having someone to schmooze your executives and explain it to them in their language, not all engineers can work with the customers that good. Not all engineers should. Now, in terms of physical and personnel security, obviously, things such as USB drives, these are a continuing issue. Some places simply do away with it. You know, It's an issue. Things such as bring your own device. People are connecting their, iPods, cell phones, iPads, everything else to corporate networks. And this is introducing even more vectors for bad things to come in. We need to be more diligent about kind of safeguarding and keeping all this out. It's a hard balance, because at the same time, you want to make it a good environment to keep your employees happy. So there's, give and take, and the understanding that they're not necessarily going to listen to you. Otherwise, USB drives would be such an issue still. Of course, access. How many times have you been somewhere where your job has changed, your permissions have not? And someone goes from being a sysadmin to being a security admin, but they still have all the permissions associated with both. Or they've gone from something completely different. Say you were an engineer, you have access to all the development environments. Now you're a project manager. You should not necessarily be able to go in and change code, depending on the type of project manager you are. Simply doing a regular review of, when someone gets promoted, backing out accesses that they don't need, that would solve some of our insider threat. And that is a large portion of it, because they're already authorized. So they can get in there, they can get the information. One place you'll see that, when people are leaving their place of employment for somewhere else, some people will do data dumps. This is when you want them to not have more access than they need. This is usually also when they turn in their 2-week notice and you turn off all their access. Because if they haven't already, then at that point, they probably will go in and start doing data dumps. The bad people. Most of us are good, but not everybody is. We've got some bad seeds out there.
Taking all those client lists, all that marketing information.
Exactly. Just download everything. Okay. Background checks. This is a standard for us. But background checks don't necessarily cover everything. So part of this is don't just rely on some of these things to tell you the entire story. Someone may not have convictions. Doesn't mean they haven't screwed up and done something bad. Doesn't mean they haven't stolen anything. Just means they haven't been caught. This is where assessing a person as a whole, interactions, things they say, how they act, references from past management. This is where all these things tie in. Because a background check alone is not going to tell you whether an individual is trustworthy. And hey, polygraphs don't really help either. Alder James passed him with flying colors. That really worked out well, right? Same thing with credit checks. Just because someone has good or bad credit isn't necessarily a reflection on them. We've had some bad economic ups and downs, and it's affected a whole lot of people. So this, again, falls within the considering a person as a whole. And reference checks. How do you know that person is actually who they say and not just a friend that they've asked, hey, when you get called for this interview for me, you're this person, I worked for you at this place, just say good stuff and that I did this specific kind of shit. Maybe before calling their references, you should check out their LinkedIn profile, because all that's out there usually. See if they did work at the same company. And, investigate their references just a little bit. There's not a whole lot that you actually have to spend energy on to find out stuff like this. It's all there. Because, they could just decide to burn the whole thing down. we kind of want to be cognizant and avoid that. And of course, training really wraps everything up. We do need training. Our personnel need training. Our executives need training. Now, we as security professionals, we need to be training our management and our executives in why security is important. We need to be proactive from our side and, kind of be security evangelists. We need to make them see that, look, it's not this big cost center that is a black hole in your budget line. This is going to save you in the long run. If you secure your stuff now, you're not going to have a lot of pissed off customers later when you expose all their personal information. Now that seems to really make a dent in people going to Target or Home Depot. It's a factor of life. Most people have really stopped caring about their privacy. And it's something we need to work on recultivating. We need to work on recultivating a care for privacy, care for OPSEC, and being aware of everything going on. And yeah, certifications are not the be-all, end-all of anything. It really just means you can pass a test. But again, it's a standard that's out there, and take that for what it is. Professional training is better than training towards a certification. I will give you more information, but we also need to be out there as part of this and pushing the information. Because one thing we need to consider is don't think of it in terms of, is this good for the company? Think about, is this good for our security? And be evangelistic, sell security, and let's just work on pulling it together and bring everybody around to our team, because everyone needs security. So that's all for me. This is my Twitter. Warning, most of my stuff on Twitter is more related to hijinks around conferences and going out and doing things like triathlon and Spartan races, so you've been warned. But feel free to hit me up if you have questions or comments. Questions?